What's up, y'all? Welcome into Grind City Media's coverage of the NBA draft brought to you by Southland Casino. He's Jon Roser. I'm Lane Whitaker. And John, we talked last night for hours and hours and hours through the first round of the draft. And tonight we got to sit at home and just watch the second round a little more peacefully. The Grizzlies had two picks in tonight's second round. Last night we saw them take Cedric Coward, obviously in the first round. A lot of questions about which way the Grizzlies were going to go tonight in the second round. And with that first second round pick, 48th overall, they took Javon Small out of West Virginia, a guy who some Grizzlies watchers and observers had kind of targeted as somebody who might be interesting for this Grizzlies team.
Yeah, Chip Williams brought him up on Jessica Benson's show yesterday. That was the one name, she
Yeah,
asked him at the end, said, give us a second round guy that, maybe he's there when the Grizzlies pick, but could be around that area. And he brought up Javon Small, and I think, you know, the Grizzlies before drafted a former West Virginia point guard a few years ago, and
that's right.
and also a Javon spelled different. Javon Carter, but there's a common theme with these guys, and these West Virginia guys play really, really hard. And when you watch some of the highlights of Javon Small, I'm going to be cliche. He does not play small. Uh,
No.
he plays taller, measured in at 6'1" at the combine, but he, with his wingspan, plays a lot taller than that and the 40.5-inch vertical, too. I think one of the things I saw
Yeah.
with the Grizzlies in this draft is that you'll notice as a theme is they also made it a point to add athleticism.
Yeah. Well, in the interview with Javon Small after he was drafted and after his pop was in tears, and that was a cool
Amazing
moment.
moment.
Yeah. When they interviewed Javon Small, he said they're getting a dog. And I think that's something else you've seen with this Grizzlies draft is kind of targeting guys who fit that mold. Javon Small, I was looking at like his bio. He was born in Indiana, went to high school in Arizona, played at East Carolina, played at Oklahoma State, ended up at West Virginia. Now he's coming to Memphis. He's been all over the place,
Yeah.
and he's gotten better every step along the way. The one kind of weakness I saw targeted for him throughout the draft process was his size. And like, there's nothing you can do about that. Everybody's like, well, he's 6'1", 6'2", maybe with shoes on, so he's a little small, but it looks like, watching those highlights of him, watching him play at West Virginia, he was the best player in West Virginia this season. Size wasn't really a problem for him. And don't you kind of think, John, like that this is a guy who's going to end up on a two-way anyway and playing a lot with the hustle and trying to work his way into the NBA?
Yeah, he very well could it up on a two-way. And I think, Bob Myers on the broadcast tonight, as the former GM who's
Yeah.
up. Bobby Marks also has been in a front office before in these draft war rooms. That Bob Myers is saying, like, that's what a lot of this, when you get mid-late second round, it's a lot of calling around to these agents and seeing if players will take two ways. No, he absolutely could be on a two-way. I think you brought up, like, he really has. He's gotten better just about
Yeah.
every. And when his minutes went up in school, his production didn't go down. It's not like, oh, well, there are guys who are like, this guy's good when he plays 20 minutes. But if you play him 25, 30 minutes, the production's not the same. No, he's a guy that the more they played him,
Yeah.
the better he was. I thought also something good, a really good free throw shooter.
Mm.
He never
Yeah.
shot worse than 85% from the free throw line in college. And I think the free throw shooting's a big thing. It shows that the shot can improve. But
Yeah.
as for the size with him, he is also a defender. And I think one thing this playoff showed, there are a lot of guys who struggle when you put pressure on the ball. They struggle to dribble. And we
Yeah.
had David Thorpe on today, and he said it's a ton of guys in the playoffs. Like when you pressure the ball, a lot of guys they don't like pressure. Basically, like there's only like a handful of guys in the league who can handle any type
Yeah.
of pressure.
For sure.
But a lot of guys, you get up on them and defend them like that, and they don't like it. And it also shows that I think the Grizzlies made a point to target these guys too.
Yeah, well, the Grizzlies also had the 55th pick in the second round, and they ended up flipping that and moving back to 59th pick. They gave the 55th pick to the Warriors. We don't know exactly what the 56th pick. We don't know what that it's going to end up being. With the 59th pick, the Grizzlies stayed a little closer to home and drafted Jamai Mashack out of University of Tennessee. It's funny because I saw all these draft like previews about Tennessee, and they mentioned possible players. Chaz Lanier was the
Yeah.
guy a lot of people talked about. Zakai Ziegler, the point guard who was there, and all these other guys. And Jahmai Mashack wasn't named a lot. Although if you watch Tennessee the last few years, you saw him because he's played like 140 games for Tennessee. He's been there all 4 years and kind of developed into a guy who is going to go down as one of those kind of program cornerstones. How he translates to the NBA, I don't know exactly because he's sort of a defense first guard, and that kind of fits the bill of what all these other Grizzly draft picks have been.
No, he absolutely was that. That's the one thing because obviously they were trying to sign off on the draft there at the
Yeah,
very. They weren't trying to spend much time on it with it being the last pick. But Jay Billis, that's the one thing he said. He's like, this kid is a defender, like a
yeah,
monster of a defender. And obviously, you got a guy like that, a guy Rick Barnes doesn't want to keep off the court. I was real quick because it was like right, the draft
yeah.
ended with that pick, and you and I hop on here. So I was trying to find some stuff on him, and when I just Googled his name, an article from Forbes came up from 2 days ago, and it says why you can't forget about Jahmai Mashack, and it basically the first part of the article says last year the Memphis Grizzlies selected Jalen Wells with the 39th overall pick, and Washington finished third in Rookie of the Year voting. The year before that, the Blazers took Tumani Kamara. Before that, Andrew Nimhard was taken by the Pacers. And it said, identifying the next second round stud is $1 million question, but if I were a betting man, I'd say a strong candidate to continue this is none other than former Tennessee Vol Jahmai Mashack. So there's at least somebody out here on the internet who identified Mashack is Matt Issa from Forbes, who obviously felt enough about this guy to write a story on him, but they say he's a rugged defender, and you clearly see they are making it a point. Also, Cedric Coward with his length and athleticism too.
Yeah.
They want to get guys that can pressure the basketball, that can really
Yeah.
put pressure on the basketball.
Well, it kind of goes to what we've talked about on a bunch of these shows the last week of how watching the NBA Finals, you kind of saw a blueprint laid forward by the Pacers and by the Thunder of finding guys who can play on the ball or off the ball, though, like wing players who gives you this sort of endless rotation of guys you can throw at offensive players from the other team and make life hard on them. And I think the Grizzlies are kind of adding to their core of guys who hopefully are able to do that in this draft. So tomorrow we got a big day on Grind City Media. I'm guest hosting for Jessica Benson, and tomorrow morning Michael Cole is going to join us from the Memphis Commercial Appeal. And then you've got on the Chris Vernon show a
Yeah.
special guest joining you guys.
Yeah, we've got Cedric Coward. Cedric Coward's going to be in studio with us on the show tomorrow. So we got that show starting at noon. Obviously tomorrow we got that. I've got a couple of I wrote down so much stuff. Let's get can I hit these
Yeah,
things
go
quick?
through. Do
Yeah,
it.
I wrote down a couple of things. First of
This
all,
is weird because I feel like I'm on your like post game Grizzly set. You
yeah,
got the
right. No,
ferns
no,
behind
no.
you and everything. Yeah.
And yeah, you got the two plants behind me. This probably going to be you're going to be the last appearance, the only guest, I guess,
I
appearance
appreciate it.
of the two plants. From now on, they're not going to be there. I thought the crew ESPN had up there tonight. Malika Andrews is awesome.
Yeah.
She's an absolute star. Malika Andrews, Bob Myers, Windhorse Billis, and Bobby Marks, and then they would go to Gavoni for the
Yeah.
international guys. But Bobby Marks was kind of there to explain a lot of the salary cap stuff. Bob Myers explaining kind of the process of how GMs are thinking about this stuff. Billis gives you all the college guys, and Windhorse is there to kind of tell you about NBA teams and all their
Yeah.
entire situation too. I thought it was really good. The Lakers trading up for Adu Thero.
Yeah.
Um,
That was cool.
interesting here because they traded up to 40 from 55 to 45, then from 45 to 36.
Yeah.
Lakers have had some success with these second round guys. And look, obviously these are different front offices, but the Lakers in the second round have gotten guys Nick Van Exel, Ruben Patterson, Luke Walton, Mark Gasol was a Lakers second round pick, Pat
Mhm.
Bev, Ivica Zubats, Taylor Horton Tucker, Max Christie, and now Adu Thero. And they also, on two-way contracts, identified Alex Caruso and
Mhm.
Austin Reeves as undrafted guys that they ended up putting on two-way contracts. So I'd say if the Lakers had a conviction enough about this guy, watch out for this dude. He's a really good athlete. The kid from Stanford, did you write anything down
Yeah.
about this kid from
Yeah.
Stanford?
Reno. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I see it pop up. I didn't know anything. And it says 20 and 10 guy, 1.5
Yep.
blocks, and can shoot threes, and he's 7 feet tall. And I'm like, why the hell is he going in the second round?
He was somebody Mike Wallace and I talked about as a possible Grizzlies
Yeah.
target because if the Grizzlies need to add a center, I mean, he's got a huge frame, and you can set giant screens. And he shot 6 3-pointers a game for Stanford this season. He played 5 years at Stanford. Like
Yeah.
he played a lot of time in college, so he has experience. They showed one of the highlights of him showed that there was people wearing masks, so like it was from like the COVID era.
Oh, the coach. That's
Yeah,
Zaire Williams' team.
yeah. So he played a lot of college basketball. I don't know. I was always I thought he was going to go at the end of the first round, and so for him not to go and then fall to the second round, I think he might be a really interesting player in the NBA. He's not quite as athletic, they said, but everything I read,
Yeah.
and then I saw clips of him like doing windmills and stuff in
I
the
saw
game.
the highlights too, and I
Yeah,
was like, I'm like, again, like you just, but anybody, I guess a lot of people have great highlights. I'm sure he has some lowlights too, but I'm like,
yeah.
he's a 7-footer who can step out and shoot threes, and he averaged 20 and 10. And they said, I was like, when they're showing his shooting, and I'm like, well, I guess he probably just isn't. He's probably just kind of soft and physical. And
Yeah.
Jake Billis is like, he is a rebounding machine. I'm like, why is this guy going 42? And then the Kings took him, and I'm like, well, maybe I don't know. you know, um, when they read off, and they read it off last night, but I guess we were at the studio, so I wasn't
Yeah.
totally. The Wizards had to. I mean, this has nothing to do with who they got in the draft, but they have Marcus Smart, Chris Middleton, C.J.
Oh
McCollum,
no,
and
no.
Kelly Olynyk. Be a solid squad like 5 years ago.
It's a weird team. And then they
yeah,
have all those, they have Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington.
yeah.
It's just a weird collection of
It,
guys.
it is. You got. I would think they're probably going to move Marcus Smart. They picked up Chris Middleton's $33 million option. Maybe that's a
No,
deadline
no,
deal.
he picked it up.
He he
It was a player
okay.
option. Yeah.
I don't blame him for picking
I
that
don't
up.
either.
I wonder if they try to, if he looks okay at some point this season, if they try to move that or whatever. Cam Jones, shout out to the Memphis kid, played
Yeah.
at Marquette. Cam Jones, drafted by the Spurs, going to the Pacers. That's cool for him. That's a great situation right there with how
Yeah.
the Pacers get up and down. Um, Chris Harrington from the Daily Memphian, I heard his podcast with Drew Hill, and he said, I have new jitty. There is new jitty. There is a new jitty in this draft. Oklahoma City got him. Brooks
Oh
Barnheiser.
yeah.
So he said, I was paying attention to him. 17 points, almost 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 block, 2.5 steals per game. 41% from the field, and he shot 26.6% from three this year, which is weird because the year before he shot 35% from three. So he had like a big drop off from three. But I was like, why would a guy who has those numbers go this late? And it's, oh yeah, he cannot shoot the ball at all.
Well, there's a couple guys like Cam Jones numbers were down this year from last
Yeah.
year. And there's always like weird circumstances. Like with Cam Jones, the point guard graduated and they went to 5-out offense this year, and he had to play point guard. And there's always these weird things. Liam McNeely, his numbers weren't great because he had an
Yeah.
ankle injury. Like there's always weird things. But that kid, look up that kid's mugshot, headshot.
Fahrenheit. Oh, the
Yeah,
mustache. He's got the
yeah,
mustache. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He
he,
absolutely has the
he looks
mustache.
hilarious.
Man, if we could have gotten that guy, I'd have fun with some hustle games this year. Um, the guy the T Wolves got, Rocco Zakarski,
Yes,
the Australian,
7'3",
who
18 years old.
he's 18 years old. I was like,
Yes.
oh, well, that's a project right there. And some of the highlights look good. And then I went and looked up his numbers, and I'm like, wait, this dude like can't even average a block a game. But he only played like 11 minutes
Yeah.
a game. So but they say he'll be the third tallest guy in the NBA behind Edie and Wemby. So anytime somebody drafts somebody really tall like that and he's 18 years old, they're like, look, he's clearly a project.
Yeah.
Is it draft and stash, or is it, hey, we're going to put him on our G League team? By the way, their G League team was the worst G League. It might be the
really?
worst G League team I've ever seen in my life last year. The were they were bad. But Rocco, I just found that interesting. Anytime they've got these super tall guys. Amiri Williams, the big man from Kentucky who went to the Celtics,
Yeah.
his passing is pretty.
Yeah, he's good.
It's why I'm kind of a sucker for the big man who can really pass the ball. It's why I kind of liked Sorber, Thomas
Yeah.
Sorber from Georgetown. He's a really good passer. And then Shams, when it came up for the Bucks to pick.
Okay, this was my favorite moment of the draft.
Okay, yeah.
I tweeted about this.
I don't know how to say this name. I would say
I don't either.
Bogeljub or Bogeljub, but Shams saying Giannis is
Yes. Closely
Absurd.
monitoring.
Yeah, closely monitoring how the Bucks draft. I'm like, are you really like he's monitoring like the 50 whatever pick that the Bucks have? Like
Yeah.
he said, and free agency. I'm like, yeah, he's more concerned with free
Yeah.
Bucks this year. They got about $54 million in dead money in Damian Lillard's contract. But what made me interested in this is I was like, you know what? The Bucks, who what have they done drafting wise since Giannis? And I looked this up. Since they drafted Giannis in 2013, these are their picks: Jabari Parker, Damian Ingles, Johnny O'Brien, Rashad Vaughn, Thon Maker, Malcolm Brogdon. There we go. Malcolm
Yeah.
Brogdon. DJ Wilson, Dante DiVincenzo. There we go. They got DiVincenzo. They traded him before he ever got good, though. RJ Hampton, Marjon Beauchamp, Chris Livingston, Tyler Smith, AJ Johnson. And those are just the ones that were their picks that they did not trade. There are other guys in here, other bad picks that, I mean, if you're Giannis, you would not want to watch them draft because clearly that is brutal.
Well, just when they said Giannis is like Shams was so serious about it, he's like Giannis is closely monitoring this Bucks offseason. And then they announced the guy and he had braces. I was like, oh man.
Braces.
If you're Giannis and you just you're monitoring this thing and they draft a guy with braces, like okay, clearly that guy's not going to contribute this year.
It's like last year they drafted the AJ Johnson kid and he was like the youngest player in the draft, and everybody's like, why are the Bucks drafting him? They need somebody that can help them win now. Like the Bucks are in win now mode with Giannis and Middleton. Like, why are they drafting the youngest player? And then they immediately traded him.
Yeah.
By the trade deadline, they had immediately moved off him, and now they drafted dude who's got braces. Yeah,
but so did Javon Small when the Grizzlies took him right after that.
Yeah.
So like
it doesn't mean everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that.
But it means something when Giannis is closely monitoring.
When Giannis is close, I wish Giannis has a sense of humor. If he would have like videoed that, if he would have seen that, if he would have had someone take a picture of himself like with his eyes like 2 feet from the television, closely monitoring the NBA draft. But yeah, those are just some things I wrote down from the second round tonight that I thought.
The one guy I was really keeping an eye on was Kobe Brea, the Kentucky kid who played before that at Dayton and shot 50% on 3-pointers.
Yeah.
And then in Kentucky it went down a little bit. I think it was like 45% or some crazy number like that. Like he was a guy who I was kind of curious where he was going to end up. He gets drafted by the Suns. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But the Grizzlies end up with Javon Small and Jahmai Mashack to go with Cedric Howard. And if you want to see Cedric Howard, tune in tomorrow morning to the Chris Vernon Show at noon on Grind City Media. And you can check out me at 8 a.m. on the Jessica Benson Show.
8 a.m. on the Jessica Benson Show.
I got to get to sleep.
Get to bed.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's Jon Roser. I'm Lang Whitaker. Appreciate you joining us here for Grind City Media's coverage of the NBA Draft brought to you by Southland Casino. We'll see you soon.